Hello YouTube, in this video I'll show you how to replace a wheel bearing and a lower ball joint. This is a long video, so I've included a table of contents in the description. As you can see, the car has 75,000 miles. Both wheel bearings went bad. If you have as much miles as me, you're gonna have to replace both. As for the lower ball joints, the passenger side had the boot torn, while the driver's side was fine. It is just much easier to replace it when the knuckle is off. While driving on a smooth surface at the speed of which you hear the noise, does the noise get worse or get better when churning? Did you hear a growling noise when churning? If you answered yes to both, then you may have a bad wheel bearing. The first step is to identify which wheel bearing has gone bad. For this, all you have to do is drive the car and turn the wheel. If you turn it slightly to the left and you hear it get louder, then you know it's the left wheel bearing. And if you do it turning it right and it gets louder, then you know it's the right wheel bearing. In the first clip, you will hear the sound of two new wheel bearings. In the second clip, you will hear the sound of a bad left wheel bearing, while the passenger side bearing is new. The very first thing we're going to do is lift up the car and take off the wheel. It's a 3/4 inch socket for the lug nuts. First get some bricks under your rear wheels. Pull the handbrake. Get the jack in the right spot. Alright, make sure it's secured, not moving anywhere. Loosen the lug nuts, 3/4. Go. Now to lift up. Alright, wheels off the ground. Unscrew your lug nuts. Alright, this wheel's coming off, but if it doesn't, you might want to tap the sidewall. Get the wheel off. Put it right under here, just in case if the car decides to drop, it drops on the wheel. Now we're going to be taking off the axle nut with a 36mm, and I'm going to use a broken screwdriver to make sure it doesn't move. Broken screwdriver into your rotor. Like so. Just take off the axle nut. Now we're going to take off the caliper. First we're going to unscrew the guide pin bolts with a 10mm. Make sure you have a zip tie on standby. We'll take this off gently. Just wiggle a little bit. Try not to damage the piston. It's off. Now we're just going to support this. Here, fallen. With an 18mm, unscrew the bracket bolts. got the bracket off and the brake pads. And we'll put the screws back in just to make sure we don't lose them. Put this off to the side somewhere. Alpha T30 bit, remove the rotor bolt. Now I will be reusing the rotor, so I'm going to take it off carefully. Now we're going to remove the 3 brake dust shield bolts using a 10mm. They should come out easily. That's 1. That's 2. And there's the 3rd one. Like I said, they come out quite easily. We'll leave these bolts in here, and just so they don't get lost. There we have the speed sensor. We'll put some lubrication on it so I don't break it, because I do not have a spare. Alright, now I'm going to let that sit for a while. Now with a 3/16 hex key, unscrew the speed sensor bolt. There you go. Don't lose it. Don't lose the washer. Now we're going to take out the speed sensor. Coming out quite nice. There you go. Now we're going to clean it up a bit. And I'm just going to support it like so. Make sure it's nice away from all the other stuff. There you go. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to mark the strut bolts. Now I'm going to mark the tie rod. There you go, tie rod's marked. We're going to tap on the axle, loosen it up a bit. Alright, that's loose. You don't have to hit it hard, just lightly tap it. We're going to put some blocks under here, just in case the car decides to come down. Alright, let's lower the car a bit. Now we're going to attach our custom slide hammer.
Need the lug nuts. There's one more. Recording? Alright. Put the lug nuts on. Sure your lug nuts are around there nice and tight. Alright, here's on. Alright, now, let's get the wheel hub off. A few more wax and it should be off. And that's how easy it is. No blowtorch. Just slide in. If you want to get this off, you're going to have to grab a grinder, grind a portion off, and just pry it off with obviously something bigger than this, but you're going to have to pry this off. I have a new wheel hub, so I will not be doing that. Not going to waste my time.
Now to unscrew the outer tie rod nut.
Alright, this is an 18mm.
If it starts spinning, take an 8mm, put it right here, hold it, and then take your 18mm and use it to unscrew the nut. Separate the tie rod from the knuckle.
Tie rod's out. Now with a 21mm, remove your strut bolt. That's one. Leave these bolts on like so. Take a hammer or a mallet and just hit it. Like so. Alright. Pretty much extra should come out just fine now. Unscrew the ball joint nut. Both sides are 15. Remove the ball joint bolt. Separate the ball joint from the knuckle. Alright, we're going to take out the snap ring. This is just to make things easier for us. Part of it, it's the other part. Snap rings out. Now we're going to take out the bearing. The washer. Getting easier. I'm just going to clean this up a bit. Make it easier to put the new bearing in. One side's metal, the other side's rubber. This is your ABS tone ring. Do not damage it or you will mess up your braking system. To press this in to the knuckle, you're gonna press on the outer part of the bearing first. Then once you have your wheel hub, you're gonna press on the inner part of the bearing. Do not damage this. This should face inward. And don't forget to put your snap ring, make sure it fits through, make sure your ABS sensor is able to get through. And yeah. Press the new wheel bearing into the knuckle. Dude, I'm stunning. Press the wheel hub into the bearing. Put in your snap ring. Now just make sure it goes smoothly. Inspect your joints. The passenger side lower ball joint boot was torn. The next thing we're going to do is replace the lower ball joint. You will be grinding, so you want to move things out of the way. Move the axle away from the ball joint. Don't have any gas tanks nearby, propane tanks. Keep your new wheel bearing away. We're going to grind down the tops of these 3 rivets. Put at least a 17mm socket under the rivet and hammer it out. The ball joint will drop.
Także się mieć?
No.
Okay.
Attach the grease fitting with a 10mm. Pump up the ball joint with grease. Inspect the control arm for damage and cracks. Attach the ball joint. From top to bottom, it should be bolt, control arm, ball joint, nut. Tighten to 42 pound-feet with a 17mm for the bolt and a 15mm for the nut. Clean and attach the knuckle to the ball joint.
Okay.
Install a new lower ball joint bolt and nut.
Nie chce mi to. Kręci się czy nie?
First, tighten to 22 pound-feet. Second, release 120 degrees. Third, tighten to 22 pound-feet. Finally, tighten it an additional 35 degrees.
Idzie.
Put the axle back in without damaging the tone ring.
Reconnect the strut. Put the strut bolts and nuts back in correctly. Okay.
A ta jest dobrze ogólnie?
No.
Okej, tak?
No.
Tighten the nuts to 82 pound-feet with a 21mm.
Czekaj, musimy wykręcić.
Reconnect the tie rod. Tighten the nut to 22 pound-feet and then 128 degrees with an 18mm.
If it starts spinning, take an 8mm, put it right here, hold it, and then take your 18mm and use it to screw the nut.
Put the ABS speed sensor back in. Tighten the speed sensor bolt to 71 pounds-inch with a 3/16 hex bit. Put the brake dust shield back on. Tighten the 3 brake dust shield bolts to 80 pound-inches with a 10mm.
That's it, nie?
Put the rotor on.
Tighten the brake rotor bolt to 80 pound-inches with a T30 bit.
Okay.
Put the brake caliper bracket on. Tighten the new brake caliper bracket bolts to 74 pound-feet with an 18mm. Put the brake caliper on. If needed, compress the piston with an old brake pad. Tighten the brake caliper guide pin bolts to 21 pound-feet with a 10mm. Put the new axle nut on. Have someone step on the brake. Pump it up first, if that hasn't already been done. Tighten it to 37 pound-feet and then 60 degrees with a 36mm. If needed, put the car in neutral to rotate the rotor. Use!
Okay.
Split the axle nut. Put the wheel on. Tighten the lug nuts to 100 pound-feet with a 3/4 inch socket. Position them. Move everything away from the vehicle. Lower the car.
I odsuń Rafał auto. Mamy na to stoi, czy nie?
Yeah. Release the handbrake. Next, you are going to test the braking system. Now, if you haven't already done so, pump up your brakes with the car off. Wait a few seconds, and again. Do this about 8 or 9 times. Start up the car. Put the car in drive and drive it a little. If you feel and hear the system engaging, then most likely you damaged the tone ring.
or you installed the wheel bearing incorrectly.
Or a few other things. Repeat steps 2 through 16 on the other side. Once everything is complete, you will have to get in alignment.
There we go.
Recording? The final thing is a simple road test. Make sure the noise and vibrations are gone. Most importantly, watch out for those potholes.